Hello and good day to everyone. Welcome to another lecture series on the subject personal identification techniques. So for this session, we will be discussing the rules of core and delta location. Okay, without further ado, let us start our discussion. So let us first define what is a core and what is a delta before we will move forward to the rules on how to locate the core and the delta of the pattern. Take note that the core and delta are always located inside the pattern area. Okay? We had discussed on the previous discussion, on the previous lecture, that the pattern area is the part of the fingerprint that was enclosed by the type lines. And that is the part of the pattern where we can see the core and the delta of the pattern. They are considered as the focal points of a fingerprint pattern. Focal points in the sense that these are the important parts of the fingerprint pattern, especially when we will be conducting your ridge counting and your ridge tracing. But it must also be noted that the core and delta are not present in your arc pattern. This is so because the arc pattern itself doesn't have a type line. Okay, so we cannot find any core and delta in an arc pattern, with exception to the tented arc. There are appearances of tented arc that looks like a loop. Okay, because as we said on our previous lecture, that a tented arc pattern is actually a transition pattern between an arc pattern and a loop pattern. Being that said, what is a core and what is a delta? So let us first define the two focal points of your fingerprint pattern. First, we have the core of the pattern. The core is located at the center or heart of the pattern area. Therefore, the core is always located at the center part of the pattern area. So always remember that it is located on the center part of the pattern area. That is why it is also called as the inner terminus of the pattern. While the delta is the opposite of the core, because the delta is often located at the point of divergence of the type lines. Well, we had discussed last time in our previous discussion the type line as well as the point of divergence. The point of divergence is the place wherein the type lines separate their direction. They separate their ways. Okay? So doon, at the middle, where they get separated, is where we can see the delta of the pattern. That's why it is also called as the outer terminus. Now, you should also take note that there are times that the delta is not located at the center part of the point of divergence. But there are also some delta that are located near the point of divergence, or in front of the point of divergence, or below the point of divergence. Okay? So as long as they are located at the point of divergence of the type lines, it will be considered as the delta. But before we forget things, take note also that the core and delta are actually friction ridges. These are friction ridges. Okay? So a friction ridge that is located at the heart of the fingerprint pattern is often referred to as the core or the inner terminus, while the ridge that is always located in front or near or even at the center of the point of divergence of the type lines are the deltas of your fingerprint pattern. Now, don't forget that core and delta are only present to your loop pattern and to your whirl pattern. You can never see the core and delta on an arc pattern. I hope that is clear to everyone. So let's move on to the next slide. Let us discuss the different rules when it comes to core location. Okay? So what are the rules that we have to consider in locating the core of the fingerprint pattern? So please be guided of the following rules. Okay? The first one states that the core, okay, I hope you can see on my slide, there you are, the core is placed upon or within the innermost sufficient recurve. But before we move on to that one, let us first define what is a recurve. Okay? In other terms, what is a recurving ridge or a looping ridge? Okay? Let me draw here. The recurve that we are referring is a friction ridge. The appearance of a recurve is just like this one. There you are. Okay? I hope you can view that in your screen. So a recurving ridge is also known as the looping ridge. Okay? Because that is one of the important elements of a loop pattern, that it must contain a recurving or a looping ridge. Without a looping or recurving ridge, we cannot classify the pattern as a loop pattern. Now, the rule states that if ever, okay, that the innermost ridge is a sufficient recurving ridge, the core is placed within that ridge. But where particularly? What part of the recurving ridge? Okay? Before we answer that, let us first identify this part of the recurving ridge. Let me use my laser pointer. This one. The one that is being pinpointed by the laser pointer. Well, I'm sorry for the noise. Now, this one, this part, the one that I am highlighting now, using my laser pointer, is known as the shoulder of the loop. Other books call it as the staple. Okay, so that is the shoulder. This one, the one that I am now pinpointing using the laser pointer. That part of the loop or the recurving ridge is the shoulder of the pattern or shoulder of the recurving ridge. Now, what are we going to do with that shoulder of the recurving ridge? Now, based on the first rule, we will treat this shoulder or we will treat this recurving ridge as if they are separated with each other. Okay? How is that possible? So we will imagine that this recurving ridge has no shoulder. It has no shoulder. So in our imagination, if this is the innermost ridge, a recurving ridge, we will imagine as if they are separated with each other. Just like that one. As if there is no shoulder that connects the ridges. So what is the next thing to do? Then that's the time that we will select now. That's the time that we will select now the core of the pattern. Well, if you can see here on the image that was presented, the core of the pattern is placed here. Okay? It was the core of the pattern. Now, why is it that the core was placed on that part of the recurving ridge? Because the rule states that you must select the leg, you must select the ridge that is far from the delta. Okay? So that is the rule for the core. If ever that the innermost sufficient recurve or the innermost ridge is a sufficient recurving ridge. We will imagine the recurving ridge as if it has no shoulder. We will treat it as if it was separated with each other. No shoulder at all. So in our imagination, there are now two ridges that are separated with each other. Then we will choose the ridge that is far from the delta. Okay, this is the delta of the pattern. Okay, so we chose this leg, we chose this ridge because it is far from the delta. Okay, as compared to the other leg. Okay, the other leg, I will change the color of my pen. The other leg, this one, should not be selected as the core of the pattern. Why? Because it is near the delta. Okay? So always bear in mind the general rule in choosing the core, if ever that the innermost ridge is a sufficient recurve. If that is a recurving ridge, you imagine, you treat it as if they are separated with each other. And you choose the leg that is far from the delta of the pattern. Okay, I hope rule number 1 or that rule is clear to everyone. Let's go to the next rule. Okay, according to the next rule, when the innermost sufficient ridges contains an even number of rods that rises as high as the shoulder, the core is placed upon the end of the center rod, whether it touches the looping ridge or not. Well, let us simplify this one. So this rule is applicable only if there are rods. When we say rods, we are referring to your ridge endings. If the innermost ridges are ridge endings or rods, and they are even, there are even number of rods, the rule states that we will choose the center rod, the end of the center rod. Okay. Now, based on this example, the one that you are viewing now in your screen, this one, let me change the color of my pen again. This one was chosen as the core of the pattern. So as you can see on the example, there are two ridges, there are two rods, there are two ending ridges that are located on the innermost part of the pattern, innermost part of the pattern area. Because there are two, they are even. Now, the question is, why is it that the ridge, the other ridge, the one that I encircled, was the ridge that was chosen as the core of the pattern? Because that ridge, that rod is far from the delta. So always remember, in choosing the core, it must always be far from the delta of the pattern. Now in this example, the delta is actually the ridge dot because it is located on the point of divergence of the type lines. Okay? So we will not choose this one. We will not choose the other rod, this. We will not choose that because it is near the delta. Therefore, we had chosen the rod or the ending ridge that is far from the delta of the fingerprint pattern. Now, for example, another example here. I will draw again a rod. For example, there are 4 rods. There are 4 ridge ending that are located at the innermost part of the pattern area. Okay. Assuming that this is also the delta, which among the following rod will be chosen? Is it number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4? Okay. Which among the following rods will be chosen as the core of the pattern? Well, if you are going to ask me, if we are going to apply this rule, the core is rod number 2. Okay? Rod number 2 and rod number 3 are the innermost rods. Am I correct? They are the innermost rods. However, rod number 3 is near the delta. Rod number 2, on the other hand, ridge ending number 2, on the other hand, is far from the delta. Sir, why we haven't chosen rod number 1? Rod number 1 is much more, rod number 1 is far also from the delta. In fact, it is the farthest of the rods from the delta. So why will we not choose the rod number 1? Well, the logic is very simple. Rod number 1 is not the innermost. So we will not choose rod number 1. Okay? Instead, we will choose rod number 2 because it is in fact the centermost and far from the delta. I hope that is clear to everyone. Okay? Moving forward to the next one. Now, this rule is applicable, the next rule is applicable to rods also, to ending ridges. But the ending ridge are uneven number of rods, uneven number of rods. So when the innermost sufficient contains an uneven number of rods that rises as high as the shoulder, well, we know already what is a shoulder. That is the part of the recurving ridge. Okay, it is also known as the staple. The core is placed upon the 2 center rods, being treated as they are connected by a recurving ridge. Okay, so how is this one? This rule states that, let me draw again an example here. If there are an even number of rods, let's say for example, there are 5. There are 5 rods. Okay. Now we will select the innermost rod, okay, as the core of the pattern. Okay, the core is placed upon the 2 center rods as if they are treated as they are connected. So based on this one, on this example that I draw, we have rod number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. And the same here in our example. Rod number 1, rod number 2, number 3, number 4, and rod number 5. So the rods are uneven. So the technique that we will do in order for you to easily obtain the core of the pattern, if in case there are uneven number of rods, you select the most center rod first. Okay, we will select the most center rod. And the center rod is actually rod number 3. And then we will connect it. We will imagine as if rod number 3 is a recurving ridge connected to rod number 2. To rod number 2. Okay? So we will imagine them as if they are connected. Hence, we will imagine as if there is a shoulder, as if there is a staple that connects the two rods. After imagining that, you look at the center of the shoulder. The center now of the shoulder will serve as the core of the pattern. The core of the pattern. Right? The core is placed upon the two center rods, meaning it is in between, the core is in between the most center rod that we had connected with an imaginary shoulder. So the core is placed on the imaginary shoulder, on the center of the imaginary shoulder of the ridges. So that is rule number 3. So in this case, let me use another color of pen. Let me use color blue. Okay. On that part, that is the location of our core. Okay. I hope that is clear to everyone. Moving forward to the next one. If ever that in the fingerprint pattern, if the innermost ridge is a recurving ridge, however, the recurving ridge was spoiled by an appendage. What is an appendage, by the way? Let me encircle the appendage with a red pen. So this one is the appendage. That is actually a spur. So if the recurving ridge was spoiled by a spur or an appendage, we will never use this recurving ridge. Okay? We will not use this one anymore. The one that I am coloring with yellow. We will not use that anymore as a reference in locating for the core because that recurving ridge was spoiled or destroyed by an appendage or by a spur. Okay? So even if it is the innermost ridge, we will not utilize that. So what is the rule? We will use the next loop outside in locating the core of the pattern. Okay. So where is that? Let me color it with color blue. So on this loop, the one that I am coloring now with color blue will be our reference point in locating for the core of the pattern. Now, because that is a loop, we will go back to the first rule. Okay? According to the first rule, a loop pattern or a sufficient recurve will be treated as if they are separated. So we will imagine that the loop that we had colored with blue are not connected. Okay? So the rule states that we will choose the leg, we will choose the ridge that is far from the delta. So if this is the delta, the one that I encircled with color blue, the core will be placed on this part of the ridge because it is far from the delta. So that will be the core of the pattern. Okay? I hope that is clear to everyone. Now let's go to the next one. Let's have an example here. Okay, so as you can see the example, let me change the color of my pen. The core was placed here. Okay. Why is it that the core was placed on that ridge? Okay. Well, our rule a while ago states that we will select the ridge that is far from the delta of the pattern. Why is it now that we are selecting a ridge that is near the delta of the pattern and we are treating it as the core of the pattern? Well, the answer is just like this one. One of the characteristic or one of the element of a core is that, especially if that is a rod, the rod must rise as high as the shoulder of the pattern. Okay? The core or the rod must rise as high as the shoulder of the pattern. As you can see, this is the shoulder of the loop. Okay, that is the shoulder of the loop, the one that is being colored with yellow. Okay. Now, this rod does not rise as high as the shoulder of the loop, but rod B or ridge B, this one, the one with the red circle, ridge B rises as high as the shoulder. So we will select that one as the core of the pattern, even if it is near the delta, because we cannot select ridge A. Even if ridge A is far from the delta, but ridge A does not rise as high as the shoulder of the pattern. Okay? So ridge B was selected as the core simply because it rises as high as the shoulder of the pattern or the loop. Okay? Another example. So as you can see, the innermost ridge is actually a ridge crossing. Okay? Ridge crossing. We have discussed what is ridge crossing. Okay? Looks like an X. So it looks like that one. But the core was placed on this part of the pattern. Okay? Let me erase that one. Erase this also. I'm sorry for the noise, class. There is an event here in the school. So this part of the ridges is considered as the core. Okay? Why? Why is it that that part of the pattern was considered or classified as the core of the pattern area? Because the rule is that we will imagine that this ridge crossing are not ridge crossing. Originally, they are just like this one. However, we will treat as if they are separated. So in our imagination, it must look like this. It must look like that one. As if this one is connected to that one and the other is connected to this one. So there are now two separate loops. Okay? So we will select, because the innermost ridge is now a loop, okay? We will imagine as if they are not connected. We will imagine as if they are not connected. So we will choose this one. In our imagination, it must look like this one now. Okay? Okay, just like that one. And because there are now two rods, we will select the rod that is far from the delta of the pattern. So if this is the delta, okay, we will select that one. Because in our imagination, the appearance of this one looks like that. Okay? I hope that is clear to everyone. Again, I am sorry for the noise, okay, because there is an event that is happening now. Okay, let's move forward to the next slide. Okay. Now let's go to the rules in your delta location. A while ago, we had discussed the rules in your core location. Now let's go to the rules in your delta. But before we proceed with the rules in your delta location, be it reminded that core is the center. Right? I am reminding everyone again that the core is the heart of the pattern. It is always located at the center part of the pattern area. And do not forget the rules that we have discussed a while ago. Now, how about the rules in your delta location? Okay, the delta, as we said a while ago in the beginnings of our discussion, that is the outer terminus, meaning it is the opposite of the core. And the location of the delta is always at the point of divergence, at the point of divergence. We know already what is a divergence as well as the point of divergence. Okay, so let's move forward. The delta, accordingly, may be located at a bifurcation which opens towards the core. Okay, before we proceed further, take note of the general rule, okay, in delta location. The general rule in your delta location is that we are always selecting the bifurcation as the delta, provided, however, that the delta is located at the point of divergence, or the bifurcation is located at the point of divergence, and the legs must open towards the core of the pattern. Just like this example. This one is the core of the pattern. Okay? Ridge A, this one, the one with color blue, and ridge B are the type lines of the pattern. Now, at the point of their divergence, let me change the color. This one, the one with color orange, at the point of divergence, there is a ridge characteristic that is in front the point of divergence. And what is that? That is a bifurcation. Does the bifurcation opens towards the core? The answer is yes, because the opening points on that direction towards the core. So we will select the opening of the bifurcation as the delta of the pattern. So always remember, when you are dealing with the bifurcation as a delta of the pattern, the bifurcation must always open towards the core of the pattern. Okay? I hope that is clear to you. Now, let's have another example here. Okay? As you can see here, class, this is the core of the pattern. Okay? Now, there are series of bifurcations here. Okay? Let me change the color of my pen into red. This one is a bifurcation, right? So you can see this is a bifurcation. This is also a bifurcation. In fact, this is a double bifurcation. However, as you can see on the slide, they were not chosen as the delta of the pattern. Rather, the ridge dot was the one selected, okay, to become the delta of the pattern and not the bifurcation. And we said a while ago that the general rule states that a bifurcation shall always be the delta. Okay? Provided, however, that the bifurcation opens towards the direction of our core. Now, in our example, this one, the one that is being pointed by the laser pointer, this one is a bifurcation. But the opening of the bifurcation is not towards the core, but rather it goes upward. Okay? So it doesn't open towards the direction of the core of the pattern. So we will not select that one as the delta of the pattern. The same is true with the series of bifurcation here. This one, this bifurcation opens on that direction. This one also opens below, okay, the core. So we will not select them as the delta of the pattern because they do not meet the requirement of a delta if that is a bifurcation. Again, I am repeating so that you will not be confused. We are only using the bifurcation as a delta if the opening of the bifurcation opens toward the direction of the core. Therefore, if they do not open towards the direction of the core of the pattern, we will not select them as the delta of the pattern. Therefore, we will look for another ridge characteristic that is located in front or near or at the center of the point of divergence. In our example, we have the ridge dot. Therefore, the ridge dot was chosen as the delta of the pattern. I hope that is clear to you. Okay? Let's move forward to the next. Now, as we are saying a while ago, the general rule is that we must always select the bifurcation as the delta. So in this example, okay, there are two forms of delta that we can see. Okay, this one, the one that I am encircling with red color, a bifurcation, and this one, the one in yellow circle, a ridge dot. They are both located on the point of divergence of the type lines. Okay? However, the bifurcation was selected as the delta of the pattern and not the ridge dot. Because as a rule, we are always choosing. We must always choose the bifurcation. But take note again of the requirement for a bifurcation. It must always open towards the core of the pattern. Now, for example, the bifurcation that was encircled with red does not open towards the core. What are you going to select as the delta? We will select now the ridge dot, okay? Because the ridge dot will serve now as the delta. And due to the fact also that it is located on the point of divergence. Okay? Hope that is clear to you also. Let's move forward to the next one. Now, another example. Okay? Assuming, class, that this is the core of the pattern. Okay? Because it is the centermost. That is the innermost ridge. So we will be selecting it as the core of the pattern. Let us give a label so that we will not be confused. So that is now the core of the pattern. Now, the next thing to do is to locate for the type lines because at the point of divergence of the type line, that is where you can see the delta. So again, applying the rules of a type line, the type lines are the innermost ridge that run parallel with each other and then they diverge. Okay? So the one that I am coloring with red now are the type line. Let's give a label. Type line 1 and this is type line 2. Okay. So we already determined the type line. Okay? Now we will put a line so that you will not be confused. A line that will indicate the point of divergence. Okay? So that is the point of divergence. The one with color green. Now there are two. There are two kinds of delta that is possible to be chosen and become the delta of the pattern. We have a bifurcation and a short ridge. Okay? So we will select the bifurcation because the bifurcation opens towards the direction of the core. If ever that the bifurcation will not open towards the direction of the core, that's the time that we will select the tip of the short ridge near the point of divergence as the delta of the pattern. Okay? Let's move forward to the next one. Now, another example. What are we going to do if ever that at the point of divergence, there are series of bifurcation? So when there is a series of bifurcations that are opening towards the core, we will select the bifurcation that is near, okay, nearest to the core of the pattern. So let me encircle the delta. So this one is the delta. As you can see, there are double bifurcations here. This one, the one that I am encircling with red, shall not be considered as the delta of the pattern. For what reason? Okay, because it does not open near towards the core. Okay, so the rule is that on a series of bifurcation, you will select the bifurcation that is nearest to the core, not the farthest. So that's the opposite of the core, right? A while ago, in the core location, we are selecting the core that is far from the delta. But when it comes to the delta, we are selecting the delta that is near the core. So in this example, we are choosing the one that was encircled with green color as the delta of the pattern because that is the bifurcation that is opening near the core of the pattern. Okay? I hope that is also clear to everyone. Let's move forward. Now, what if, just like on this example, at the point of divergence, okay, this is the point of divergence, the one that I am lining with red. At the point of divergence, there is no ridge that is located there. However, there is a ridge near the point of divergence. In fact, in front of the point of divergence, just like on this example. Okay? So we will select that one. We will select that ridge as a reference point in locating the delta or in placing the delta of the pattern. So there is a short ridge near the point of divergence, in front of the point of divergence. But there are two sides of the short ridge. Let me encircle the two sides of the short ridge. Okay. This one, the one encircled with yellow, and the other side is this one, the one that was encircled with orange color. Now, the rule is we will be selecting the tip or the end which is near the point of divergence. Therefore, we will be selecting the tip or the end which was encircled with orange color. Why? Because primarily it is near the point of divergence. Okay? I hope that is clear to you. What if this is the situation? What if at the point of divergence, there is a ridge? Okay? In this example, we have an ending ridge. What part now of the ending ridge are we going to choose as a placement of our delta? Okay, so there are two sides. This one, the one with orange, and this one, the one with color yellow. So where are we going to place the delta? So if the ridge accordingly enters the pattern area below the point of divergence, the delta must be located at the end nearer to the core. Okay. The orange one was selected because that is the tip that is near the core of the pattern. We will not select this one because that end is far from the core of the pattern. I'm sorry again for the noise. I hope you would understand. I am actually here at the school recording this lecture. Okay, so the tip that is near the core shall be considered as the delta of the pattern. Okay, moving forward. Another example, okay? As you can see, the delta was placed here, okay? Because accordingly, the dot cannot be considered as the delta, this one, this dot, because line B, this one, is not considered as a type line. So where are the ridges that are considered as the type line of the pattern? We have ridge A and we have ridge B. Okay, those are the type line. Now at the point of divergence, okay, there is a ridge exactly at the point of divergence, which is the tip of ridge E. So ridge E, the tip of ridge E, which is near the point of divergence, was considered as the delta of the pattern. Okay? I hope that is clear to you. Why are we not choosing this? We will not choose that one because it is far from the point of divergence. Even if it is near the core, but it is far from the point of divergence. That is in contrast with this. Why? Because this ridge is already located inside the pattern area, while this ridge is located outside the pattern area. So we will, if the ridge is located outside the pattern area, just like this, inside the pattern area, just like this one, we will select the end near the point of divergence. But when it comes to this ridge that is located outside, we will select the end near the core of the pattern. Okay? I hope that is clear to everyone. That is all for this discussion. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time. Thank you.